What I want to do in this video is sort of clarify a point which is made by some atheists. Now, when we speak about the names and attributes of God as Muslims, sometimes to sort of clarify the problem of evil, because it's done away with once you really understand who God is, or sometimes just to share the names and attributes of God to highlight how understanding who God is and His attributes, or getting a sense of understanding about His attributes, brings us closer to God, right? Builds our relationship with our Creator. What some atheists would do is they would say, well, hold on a second, you're anthropomorphizing God. You're giving God human-like qualities. You're saying, well, God is the most merciful. Human beings are merciful. Therefore, you're saying this is something we share in common. Now, before I answer this and address this particular point in today's video, let me just start off by saying, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, click the notification bell, and make sure to share these videos so other people can benefit from them too. That being said, let's address this problem. Now, the first thing I want to highlight is that this issue is not unique to people that we live amongst today. If you look throughout history, there were certain offshoots in Islam, certain groups who were influenced by certain philosophies and philosophical outlooks that also made such claims. And what they would do is that they would approach the names and attributes of God and say, well, look, when God says He's the most merciful, it's not to be understood like this. We have to interpret these in a figurative way. God doesn't mean He's the most merciful, He means something else by this. And the reason they did this, the attempt was that in doing so, they were somehow preserving God's divinity, but in actual fact, to do this, they were denying God's names and attributes, denying, in other words, what God Himself was telling us about Himself. Right? And the reason they fell into these errors and people today fall into these errors is based on some basic misunderstandings, some fundamentally flawed assumptions, and which is in this case, for example, when they read God is the most merciful, they automatically, for some reason, understand that as if that mercy is to be understood as we understand mercy, or from a human perspective, right? But why understand it or ponder upon it in such a way? Why not understand these names and attributes of God in line with the rest of the Quran, in line with certain underlying fundamental axioms and principles that God has outlined in the Quran, such as where He tells us that لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ, there is nothing like Him, there is nothing comparable to Him. Or where He says وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٍ, that there is no kufu, there is no equal, there is nothing that even comes close to God. Where God says He is ahad, that He is uniquely one and alone, there is nothing that comes close. So when we understand these realities about God, then we should understand these names and attributes of God through this lens of understanding. And therefore we would understand that when God says He is the most merciful or the most loving, that He does mean this, that we understand this and we do affirm that God is the most merciful and the most loving. That we don't say that, no, God doesn't mean He's the most merciful when He says He's the most merciful, but we have to interpret this in a figurative way. No, we don't need to do these gymnastics, right? When God says He's the most merciful, He is the most merciful, but we understand that God's mercy is perfect, without deficiency, without flaw. However, the mercy of created things, the mercy He created within creation, is deficient, is flawed. When God says He's the most loving, we understand that God's love is pure, it's without deficiency, without flaw, but the love of created things, the love that's scattered within creation, is deficient, it's flawed. Right? That's how we understand the difference. But this is the way we clearly understand this, and it does away with that sort of problem where it's basically dodgy philosophy. It's a shoddy philosophy where, based on a misunderstanding, an incorrect assumption, we have built this whole case and we think that we're doing something good by denying the... No, you don't need to go down this route. It's very simple from the Orthodox perspective that we affirm God's names and attributes, but at the same time we understand and we clarify that God's names and attributes are perfect, without any flaws or deficiencies, but the attributes of creation are flawed and deficient from that perspective. So that being said, hopefully that clarifies things. And I really wanted to clarify this, because now this allows us to understand the names and attributes of God, ponder over them, and this allows us to get closer to God. So for example, where God says that He is our Lord, the Arabic word is Rabb, He is our Rabb. This brings the understanding that He is the one that provides for us, sustains us, nourishes us. He is the one that's ensuring our growth, our sustenance. He is the one that's, taking care of every moment of our existence. So when we understand this, this brings our hearts closer to our Creator, right? Instead of denying these names and attributes of God or understanding them in a sort of deficient way as we would understand the attributes and names of creation. Also reflect upon it. Reflect upon the difference. For example, when we know of or hear of someone that's loving, or we experience the love of someone in our family or our friend circle, we are drawn to that person. But reflect upon this, that their love is deficient. It's not perfect, you know. It's probably dependent, right? But yet we are drawn to such a person. What about the being whose love is pure? It's without deficiency, without flaw, with the being who loves us more than our own mothers love us. Shouldn't we be drawn to him, right? So reflect upon the names and attributes of God. And I really encourage everyone to do this, including the non-Muslims, but do it with this clear understanding of God's names and attributes. I thank you guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe, click the notification bell. Until next time, take care.